What if everything you thought you knew about Diddy was wrong? What if there's a deeper story lurking behind the headlines, one that's been hidden for decades? Today, I'm pulling back the curtain, revealing the truth behind the powerful empire, the parties, the people, and the dark secrets no one has dared to address until now. I've uncovered proof, and what I'm about to show you changes everything. No more whispers, this is the reckoning you've been waiting for. I've spent years digging through the layers of secrecy, uncovering hidden truths that stretch back over 30 years, and now I've revealed it all, every detail, every connection. The truth is out in the open, and there's no turning back. I've provided undeniable proof of the figures involved with Diddy, and for the first time I've released shocking footage from his infamous parties, gatherings that were the backdrop to a web of power, manipulation, and control. These aren't just idle rumors, this is irrefutable evidence. No one can hide from the truth anymore. Not Diddy, not the celebrities who have been complicit, and certainly not the public. Jay-Z, after watching the rest of this documentary, you'll finally understand the depth of it all. You'll understand why this moment is different. Today, January 10th, is a day that will haunt Sean Combs. It's a day he won't be able to escape. Netflix has just released what 50 Cent is calling the next chapter of The Reckoning. But don't be fooled, this isn't just another chapter in an ongoing saga. No, this time it feels different. It feels intentional. It feels like a message. This release wasn't accompanied by the usual pomp and circumstance. There were no massive promotional campaigns, no press tour, no months of build-up to hype the audience. It didn't have flashy trailers or teasing Instagram posts leading up to the premiere. It simply dropped quietly, unexpectedly, almost as though it was never meant to make a splash, just to exist. And that in itself should send a powerful message. When stories of this magnitude drop without fanfare, without warning, it's rarely about entertainment. It's about something else, something far more intentional. It's about timing, calculated, deliberate timing. Back in December, when Sean Combs' The Reckoning first aired, many believed that they had finally seen the complete story, the whole picture. 4 parts, each carefully crafted, offering a deep dive into the rise of Diddy's empire. It covered everything: his ascent to fame, the mounting allegations, the ongoing investigations, the people surrounding him, and the pivotal moments right before everything began to fall apart. That documentary shook the industry to its core. Careers went silent. Public statements ceased. Conversations in the industry shifted from open discussion to hushed whispers. But even then, something about it felt incomplete, like a puzzle with pieces missing. There were moments that were too brief, cutting away just when the viewer was about to understand something crucial. Questions were raised but never fully addressed. Names were dropped but never fully explained. There were gaps in the story, gaps that couldn't have been accidental, gaps that felt deliberate. 50 Cent was quick to point out the truth behind the scenes. He made it clear repeatedly that what was shown in December was only a fraction of the full story. And now, with this new release, that fact is undeniable. It proves it beyond any shadow of a doubt. This time, the documentary takes a different approach. The focus isn't on Diddy's rise to fame or his legacy. It doesn't rehash the same narrative for casual viewers who may not have seen the first part. No, this release assumes you already know the basics. You already know what happened in December. Instead of revisiting the well-trodden paths of his backstory, this documentary shifts its focus entirely. It moves beyond the public narrative and dives deep into the shadows, uncovering what was happening behind closed doors, the parts of the story that were deliberately kept out of the public eye. And that shift, that new direction, changes everything. This isn't just a continuation, it's a bold, strategic decision to go further than anyone expected. The tone of this release is night and day compared to the first. Gone are the lengthy interviews and the historical framing that were present before. This time the pace is tighter, the tone heavier, the atmosphere more uncomfortable. It's no longer about reminding you who Sean Combs was, it's about revealing what was never shown before and forcing you to question why it was hidden. Why were certain things never addressed? Why are they being shown now? The timing of this release, combined with the focus on hidden truths, makes the message clear. It's not about Diddy's legacy anymore. It's about revealing the mechanisms of power and how those in control used silence and manipulation to shield themselves from accountability. What makes this release even more unsettling isn't that it claims to uncover new truths, because it doesn't directly do that. What makes it powerful is how it reframes everything you thought you knew. Old moments that once seemed isolated and insignificant suddenly sit side by side, revealing patterns and connections you never noticed before. Conversations that seemed innocent or unimportant now carry a weight that can't be ignored. The absence of clear explanation, the moments of silence between the clips, become louder than any accusation could ever be. And that's the brilliance of it all. The timing isn't just coincidental, it's purposeful. This release doesn't appear in a vacuum. It doesn't drop just to keep the public entertained or shocked. It arrives at a time when legal appeals are still ongoing, when civil lawsuits are quietly unfolding in the background, and when the industry remains largely silent on the issue. Former allies and accomplices who once spoke freely are now choosing their words carefully, or in many cases, choosing to remain silent. That silence, it's part of the story. It's a powerful tool, a tool that the documentary uses to its advantage. Because silence isn't passive, it's active, it's carefully orchestrated, strategically timed. This documentary doesn't try to spoon-feed you answers. It doesn't tell you what happened, it asks the question, why was this never addressed? Why has this silence been allowed to persist for so long? And once that question is posed, it doesn't fade. It lingers, forcing you to think, forcing you to question everything. This new release isn't just aimed at the casual viewer or the audience. It's aimed at the very industry that allowed this story to unfold in the first place. It's aimed inward, toward the people who understand the significance of the clips, the recordings, the images that are shown. Those who can read between the lines, who don't need everything spelled out for them. The power lies not in loud declarations, but in the subtle, quiet implications that are left hanging in the air. Power isn't challenged by loud, overt accusations, it's challenged by context. And this documentary doesn't shout, it quietly presents the evidence, allowing you, the viewer, to make the connections on your own. You're not being spoon-fed the narrative, you're asked to fill in the gaps, to come to your own conclusions. And when the viewer is invited to make those connections themselves, the impact is far more profound. This time, the documentary doesn't linger on public moments. It doesn't focus on the award shows, the red carpets, or the interviews that everyone has already seen. Instead, it takes you to the moments that happen in between, the after parties, the private conversations, the planning stages, the moments just before the cameras were supposed to stop rolling. These are the kinds of moments that don't typically make it into the public eye. These are the moments that reveal the true nature of the power structures at play. From the very first scene, you can feel the shift. The pacing is tighter, more deliberate. The scenes don't resolve in the way you might expect them to. Conversations cut off abruptly. Footage cuts away just when you start asking questions, leaving you with an uncomfortable sense of unfinished business. But this isn't a mistake, it's restraint. Restraint signals confidence. It tells you that the creators don't need to convince you of anything, they've already shown you enough. Now it's up to you to draw the conclusions. What stands out in this release is the careful handling of context. Every clip, every moment, every voice is presented with build-up. You're shown where people were, who was with them, and how often these same individuals and scenarios repeat themselves. Repetition, it turns out, isn't just a coincidence, it's a powerful indicator of a pattern. And patterns, as we know, are what investigations are built on, not isolated incidents. There's an emotional shift in this chapter. While the earlier documentary felt like a revelation, a moment of awakening, this one carries with it a sense of consequence. The energy is colder now. There's a resigned quality to it, as if the shock has worn off and the truth has settled in. And that's when things get dangerous, not for the people involved in the story, but for the reputations they've worked so hard to protect. Because while outrage fades, records remain. What's striking is how little commentary is needed to make an impact. Long stretches of silence pass without explanation, yet the meaning behind each moment builds and intensifies. The documentary doesn't have to spell it out for you. You're shown just enough for you to understand why it matters, and once you understand, you can't unsee it. The documentary doesn't demand your belief, it assumes your awareness. It trusts that you remember what was said months ago, who denied what, who stayed silent, who spoke too early and then vanished. It trusts that you can feel the weight of what's missing just as much as what's present. And that's the turning point. Because once you start noticing the missing pieces, once you realize that silence is no longer a natural part of the conversation, it becomes part of the strategy. It becomes a deliberate move in a much larger game. That shift changes everything. The documentary no longer feels like a simple recounting of events. It feels like pressure. A quiet pressure that builds with every revelation, every moment of silence. That is the true power of this documentary, not because of the new footage, but because of the weight of the absence. Because in the spaces where words were left unsaid, in the gaps where explanations were postponed, the story begins to take on a new shape, a shape that cannot be ignored. This chapter shifts the focus from telling you what happened to showing you why it matters. And once you see that, the entire story becomes inescapable. It doesn't need to scream for your attention, it simply waits for you to see what's been hidden all along. And that's when the story changes. Because once you notice the patterns, once you start seeing the connections that were always there, the truth stops being just a story, it becomes something that demands to be reckoned with. The reckoning has begun. Gone are the lengthy interviews designed to create a structured narrative. Gone are the historical overviews meant to frame the story in a way that makes it easier to digest. This time, the tone feels radically different, sharper, darker, more intense. It doesn't aim to remind you who Sean Combs was or to revisit his legacy once more. No, this chapter goes deeper, taking us beyond the surface and into uncomfortable territory, forcing us to confront questions that have been deliberately overlooked for far too long. Why were certain events hidden from view? And why, after all these years, are they only being revealed now? What makes this release so unsettling isn't just that it claims to expose new secrets. In truth, it doesn't. What makes this documentary so powerful is the way it takes what we thought we knew and reshapes it. It takes the old truths, the pieces of the puzzle that have been lying in plain sight, and it reframes them in a way that's impossible to ignore. Moments that once seemed separate, unconnected, now sit side by side. And in their proximity, patterns emerge, patterns you've never noticed before. Conversations that appeared to be simple or innocuous now take on an entirely new meaning, carrying a weight that feels heavy in the pit of your stomach. The absence of explanation in certain moments, the gaps that were left between the scenes, becomes more deafening than any accusation ever could. In this absence, the silence isn't accidental, it's deliberate. It's a form of storytelling, a way to let the viewer's mind work overtime, filling in the blanks. And this is where timing becomes critical. This documentary didn't just drop into the world randomly. It didn't appear without purpose. It was released with precision at a moment in time when the legal battles are still ongoing, when civil lawsuits continue to unfold quietly behind closed doors, and when the industry, for the most part, has chosen to remain silent. The voices that once spoke freely, who were once unafraid to share their truths, are now watching their words carefully if they speak at all. Some have chosen to remain silent completely, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of caution. That silence, it's not a coincidence, it's part of the story. And the fact that the documentary allows that silence to linger without explanation only adds to the weight of the moment. This isn't a documentary that just tells you what happened. It doesn't simply run through the events of the past. It raises a question that no one has dared to ask before. Why was all of this allowed to remain unaddressed for so long? Why were the cracks in the facade ignored for so many years? Why did the truth remain buried, concealed beneath layers of power and influence? And once that question is raised, it doesn't just fade into the background, it doesn't disappear. It lingers, hanging in the air, forcing you to confront it. It's a question that stays with you, asking you to dig deeper, to question everything you thought you understood about this story. What sets this release apart, what makes it truly different, is that it's not aimed at the audience in the way you might expect. It's not designed to entertain or shock. Instead, it feels as though the focus is inward, aimed at the very industry that allowed all of this to unfold. It speaks to those who already understand the significance of certain images, the weight of particular recordings, the unspoken meanings behind specific moments. Nothing is explained, nothing is spoon-fed to you. And that's not a mistake, it's intentional. Because real power, the kind of power we're dealing with here, isn't shaken by loud dram. Attic accusations or sensationalism, it's shaken by context, by the way a story is framed, by the gaps that are left, by the silences that scream louder than any words could. This documentary isn't loud, it doesn't shout for attention, it's patient. It doesn't rush to conclusions, nor does it try to fill in the blanks too quickly. It allows the moments to sit there, hanging in the air long enough for discomfort to settle in. In discomfort, that's where the danger lies. Discomfort is a powerful thing, it doesn't go away easily, it sticks with you, it makes you question everything. And that's exactly what this documentary does. It's not about giving you all the answers. It's about making you sit with the questions, forcing you to reckon with the uncomfortable truths that have been ignored for so long. This isn't a sequel trying to outdo the first. It's not about competing with what came before. It's about recalibrating the narrative. It's about repositioning the story, forcing you to see things from a new perspective. It's as though someone is saying, "You thought that was everything, think again." This documentary doesn't rush. It's in no hurry. It's not trying to outpace you. Instead, it lets you catch up, let the pieces fall into place on your own. And when they do, you realize that everything has changed. What you thought was a complete picture is now shattered, and the fragments left behind are far more revealing than anything you ever expected. The documentary doesn't overwhelm you with noise. It doesn't try to create a spectacle. It doesn't try to manipulate you into reacting. What it does is something far more insidious. It forces you to sit with your discomfort, to reflect on what's been left unsaid, and to wonder why certain moments were ignored or brushed aside. The silence in the room isn't neutral, it's charged, it's intentional. And once you realize that, once you see the silence for what it really is, you can no longer ignore it. This chapter isn't about presenting you with new facts. It's about showing you what was always there, just out of sight, just out of reach. It's about turning the lens on what was hidden in plain sight, the moments you overlooked, the gaps you ignored, the things you never asked about. It's about forcing you to confront those truths, and in doing so, it forces you to question the very nature of the story itself. This isn't just a documentary, it's a reckoning. A reckoning that makes you question everything you thought you knew, and that in itself is what makes it so powerful. This isn't a simple continuation of a story. This is a shift in the narrative. It's a recalibration, a repositioning, a message sent loud and clear, but not through noise, through silence. Through the uncomfortable, lingering silence that now fills every gap, every pause, every unanswered question. It's a story that has only just begun to unfold, and what's coming next will be far more revealing than anything that has come before. Because in the world of power, silence isn't just a void, it's a weapon. And that realization that the story isn't finished yet is what gives today a sense of gravity. Once the idea of more enters the picture, silence can no longer hold the same power it once did. What makes this chapter so profoundly heavy isn't what it reveals, it's what it deliberately refuses to show. It's not the shocking truths that come to light, but rather the subtle refusal to do the typical, to make everything clear, to wrap things up neatly. The very absence of explanation becomes its own form of revelation. There's no dramatic voice dictating how you should feel, no flashy captions filling in the blanks, and no narrator spelling out accusations for you. Instead, the documentary takes a different approach. It pulls back, withholds judgment, and lets the pieces of the puzzle fall into place without any overt commentary. This method of storytelling places the power back in the hands of the audience, allowing you to make the connections on your own. And that's where the power lies, because making the connections yourself hits harder than having them handed to you. As you watch, you begin to notice patterns in the footage, how certain names appear near certain situations, how timelines that seem disjointed suddenly overlap in ways that were never publicly discussed. You realize that people who once seemed disconnected are now revealed to be part of the same web, part of the same circles, the same events, the same nights. Those subtle overlaps are where the tension begins to simmer. What makes this approach so effective is that nothing is shouted, everything is implied, and those implications are far more powerful than any accusation could ever be. They force your memory to do the heavy lifting. Your mind starts to connect the dots on its own, and it's that mental effort, the slow, deliberate drawing of connections that creates the true weight of the story. It's not about telling you what to think, it's about making you think, making you confront what's been left unsaid, and what's been deliberately hidden from the public eye. This chapter doesn't linger on the public spectacles, the award shows, the red carpets, the interviews that everyone's already seen. Those moments, as flashy and entertaining as they are, don't tell the full story. Instead, the focus shifts to the in-between spaces, the moments that happen after the cameras stop rolling, when the public faces give way to private conversations and untold truths. It's about the after-parties, the quiet moments that happen behind closed doors, the moments just before the cameras are supposed to cut, where the real story often takes place. Those are the moments that don't usually make it into documentaries, the moments that get lost in the noise of public life. But in this documentary, those moments are where the truth lingers. From the very first frame, you can feel the shift in the pacing. The rhythm of the documentary is different, it's tighter, more deliberate. The scenes don't unfold in a way you might expect, they don't resolve immediately or tie everything up neatly. Conversations are cut short, footage is edited in such a way that just as your brain starts to ask questions, it cuts away. And that's not an accident, it's restraint. The filmmakers are showing incredible confidence in their storytelling. They're not rushing to provide answers. Instead, they present the pieces and then they step back, allowing you to take the time to process it, to reflect, to question. It's a powerful form of storytelling that invites contemplation rather than immediate conclusions. And there's something more beneath the surface here. The documentary is meticulous about context. Nothing is presented in isolation. Every clip, every moment, every voice is framed with careful buildup. You're shown not only what happened, but where people were, who they were with, and how often these situations repeat themselves throughout the timeline. This isn't just a coincidence, it's intentional repetition, a pattern that emerges and builds as the documentary unfolds. Repetition, when used this way, is a tool, an incredibly powerful tool. It's not just about creating suspense or drama, it's about turning what seemed like a random incident into a concrete pattern. And patterns, as we know, are what investigations are built on. They're what tie everything together in the end, not isolated events that exist in a vacuum. The real story, the deeper truth, begins to emerge when you see the pattern for what it is, a calculated design that has been unfolding behind the scenes all along. And that realization, that's when the story becomes undeniable. This release is not just another chapter, it carries an emotional weight that's hard to ignore. The earlier documentary felt like a revelation, a wake-up call. But this one carries consequence. The energy is colder now, more resigned, as if the story has moved beyond the point of shock and has entered the stage where reality settles in. And that's when things become dangerous for reputations, for careers, for the very foundation of everything that's been built. Because while outrage and shock eventually fade, records remain. What's been captured, what's been documented, what's been revealed, all of it stays. Time doesn't erase the truth, even if the world moves on. What's most striking about this release is how little commentary is needed. There are long stretches where nothing is explained, no voiceovers, no narration, just silence. And yet in that silence, meaning builds, it simmers. You're shown just enough to understand why it matters. There are no hand-holding explanations. Instead, you're left with the space to make up your own mind. And once you make that connection, once you start to see the patterns, you can't unsee them. The truth, once uncovered, refuses to go back into hiding. This chapter doesn't demand your belief or your acceptance. It assumes your awareness. It trusts that you remember the details from months ago, the statements that were made, the denials, the silences. It trusts that you recall who spoke out, who kept quiet, who disappeared, and who reappeared when it was convenient. It asks you to feel the weight of what's absent as much as you feel the presence of what's shown. And that right there is the turning point. Because once you begin to notice the missing pieces, once you realize that silence is no longer a natural part of the conversation, it becomes a weapon. It becomes part of the story. Every silence, every decision to withhold information becomes deliberate. It's no longer passive, it's strategic, and that realization, it shifts everything. The documentary stops feeling like a mere narrative, it becomes a force. It carries the weight of something bigger. It builds pressure slowly and quietly until you realize it's no longer just about telling you what happened. It's about showing you the patterns, showing you the design. Shape is dangerous. Shape means design. It implies intent. And once something holds shape, it no longer feels accidental. It's been planned, carefully orchestrated. That's the moment when this documentary stops being just a recounting of events. It starts implicating. You are no longer a passive viewer detached from the story. You become a witness to it, part of the unfolding truth. And once you become a witness, things don't go away quietly. They settle into your mind like a memory that refuses to fade. The more you watch, the more you realize this is no longer just about one person's fall from grace. This is about something much larger. It's about a system that's been built with patience, with timing, a system that knows how to manage narratives, how to let them surface just enough to create noise, just enough to get attention, and then wait for the world to move on, wait for people to forget. But this time, the system has underestimated something. This time, it isn't working. This time, the silence isn't enough to cover up the truth. And that's why this chapter feels different, not because of what it reveals, but because of what it leaves unsaid. The silence is no longer neutral. It's intentional. It's a signal, a message. It's telling you that some explanations would bring more clarity than comfort. It's a warning that some conversations are too risky to finish. It's a message that distance, that space, still feels safer than alignment, that the truth can't be fully embraced without consequences. Once you recognize that, the story shifts. Not because of new footage, not because of shocking revelations, but because the absence of answers speaks louder than anything that has been said. The silence becomes deafening. Every pause, every unspoken moment becomes part of the record. It's not just what is said, it's what's left unsaid. And once those moments are in the record, they carry weight. They start to feel like they've always been there, like the missing pieces were always meant to be there, waiting to be noticed. By now, the audience begins to realize something critical. The silence wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a void that accidentally formed. It was carefully constructed. Every choice to hold back, every decision to leave things unsaid adds pressure, and in that pressure, the viewer is forced to make their own connections. It's a subtle form of manipulation. It's not about giving you the answers. It's about creating space for you to find your own. And once those connections start to form, the story stops feeling like a random string of events and starts to feel like a meticulously crafted narrative, a pattern that has been carefully laid out from the beginning. It was always there, waiting for you to see it. The tension in this chapter doesn't come from the shocking revelations, it comes from the things left unsaid. The weight of those gaps, of those pauses, becomes heavier than any piece of information that could have been presented. And it's in that silence, in that space between the moments, that the true weight of the story emerges. It's no longer just about what you've seen. It's about what you felt in the gaps, in the moments of restraint. And once you feel that, once you understand how the silence works, everything changes. The story stops being just a story. It becomes a warning. It becomes a lesson in power, patience, and control. And in that lesson, everything you thought you knew is appended. The silence is no longer neutral. It is the most powerful force in the room. This isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning. If you're as shocked as I was watching this, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We're just getting started. This documentary doesn't just want you to watch, it wants you to question everything. So share this video with someone who needs to see it, and let's keep the conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's unravel this together. What do you think is really happening behind the scenes? Remember, the truth is out there, and we're just getting started.